Hi everyone, so I'm going to be going over question number 3 on your homework problems. So we are looking at the following information pertains to Hagen Metal Works ending inventory for the current year. And then it just gives us that information. And for part A, we need to determine the value of the ending inventory using the lower of cost or market rule applied to 1, each individual inventory item, and 2, the inventory in aggregate. So what's important here is that we're using the lower of cost or market rule. What does that mean? Well, it's actually pretty easy. All we have to do for the lower of cost or market rule is basically figure out what's lower, the cost of the market value or the actual cost of the unit. And that is the lower of cost or market rule. So for the individual inventory item method, we're basically going to figure out what the lower of the cost or the market is for each unit, so for each item, so C, D, K, and M. And then the inventory in aggregate, we're going to add all of them up for each cost and the market value and see which one is lower, which I will be going over right now. So the first is the individual inventory item method. So we're going to look at each item. So we have C, D, K, and M. Now we can see that the lower of cost or market for item C is what? 11 or 7? Obviously it's 7. So we're going to do 300, which is the quantity, times the market value of 7. Which is 2100. Then we're going to do for D. So it's 290 quantity. What's the lower of cost or market? It is 10. So 290 quantity times $10, which is 2,900. K is 78 times the cost of 9, which is lower than the market value. So 78 quantity times $9, which is 702. And then 74 times what's the lower of cost or market? It is 6. So 74 quantity times 6. So 4, 4, 4. So now we're just going to add them all together to figure out what the value of the ending inventory will be using the lower of cost or market rule when applied to the individual inventory item method. So when we add all of these together, we get 6146 for the ending inventory value. And let's see if that is correct. And it is 6,146 is going to be the answer for the individual item method. Now the second method we're going to be looking at is the aggregate method. So under this method, as I said before, we're going to take each item, multiply it by the unit cost, add that together, multiply each quantity by the market value, add those together, and then the lower of those sums is going to be the value of the ending inventory, which is our answer. So that is what we are going to do right now. So we're going to have C, D, K, and M. We're going to have the unit cost, and then unit market value. So for C, again, we have 300 times, now the unit cost is $11. So we're going to multiply that by 11, which is 3,300. And then if we do 300 times the market value of 7, it's $2,100. Then we're going to do the same thing for D. So 290 times the unit cost of 13 is 3,770. And then 290 times the market value of $10 is 2,900. Then we're going to do for K, 78 times 9 for the unit cost, which is 702. And then 78 times the market value, which is 13, which is 1014. And we're going to do the same thing for M. So 74 quantity times 6 unit cost, which is 444. And then 74 times the market value of 13, which is 962. And now we're just going to add up this column and this column. So 3,300 plus 3,770 plus 702 plus 444 is 8216. Then we're going to add this together. So 2,100 plus 2,900 plus 1014 plus 962 is 6,976. So now we need to figure out what the lower of cost or market is. So what's lower, 8216 or 6,976? Obviously, this is the lower amount, so this is going to be our ending inventory value, since the market is lower than the cost in this example. So 6,976 should be the answer, and look at that, it is. Perfect. So now moving on to part B. We need to prepare any necessary journal entries, assuming that the decline in value is immaterial, using the 1 individual method and 2 the aggregate method. Hagen Metal Works uses the perpetual inventory system. So basically what this is asking for is it wants to figure out what the book value of your inventory is. What's the book value? It's the unit cost. So it basically wants to figure out what the total of your quantity multiplied by your unit cost is, and then subtract that from the individual item method and the aggregate method. The reason for this is because, as you can see, while the inventory for item C, for example, is $11 on our books, the market value of it is only $7. So would it be fair for us to tell our investors that our inventory is worth $11 when it can only really be sold for $7? No, that would not be fair to our investors, because that is not a fair representation of the cost of our inventory. So we want to make sure that we're writing down our inventory based on the lower of cost or market rule to have a more fair representation of what our inventory is actually worth to make it more fair for our investors. So now that I explained it, let's jump into it. So this is for part B. So first we're going to look at the individual inventory item method. So as I said before, we want to figure out what our inventory is worth on our books, which again is the unit cost of our inventory. So all we have to do is multiply the quantity times the unit cost and then add it together. So we have C, D, K, and M. So we would do 300 times the unit cost of 11, which is 3,300. 290 times 13, which is 3,770. 78 times 9, which is 702. 74 times 6, which is 444. Add that all together, 8216. And remember, that's basically just what I did right over here. So you could just look at this. I just decided to rewrite it to show you guys. But this is what our inventory is worth on our books. Now we have to see what it is actually worth under the individual inventory item method. So based on the lower of cost or market rule using the individual inventory item method, we said that our inventory was only worth 6,146, right? That was the ending inventory value. That was the worth of our inventory. So now all we have to do is take this 8216, subtract what our ending inventory value was for this method, and you get 2,070. So that is the write down that we have to show on our books for our inventory, because again, we can't say our inventory is worth 8,216 when under the lower of cost or market rule, it's only $6,146. That's why we have to make this adjusting entry. So now to actually write out what the entry is, if we are writing down the worth of our inventory, what would the journal entry be? Well, obviously inventory is going to be credited, right? Because we're writing down the value. So that's our credit. But now let's think, what could our debit be? The debit is to cost of goods sold. So that is the journal entry for this. And if you look, that is the right answer. Now we're just going to do the same thing, but instead of figuring it out for the individual inventory item method, we're going to use the aggregate method under the lower of cost or market rule. So under the aggregate method, we already know that the inventory on our books is 8,216. And now we have to figure out what the ending inventory value was under the aggregate method, which we figured out over here. It was 6,976. So when you subtract the two, you get $1,240. And now this is going to be the write down that we have to write for the aggregate method. Because, again, just to reiterate one more time, we can't say that our inventory is valued at $8,216 when under the aggregate method using the lower of cost or market rule, the ending inventory value is only $6,976. So we have to write it down for the difference. So the journal entry is just going to be the same. So cost of goods sold will be debited while inventory is credited for $1240, which is correct. So hopefully that gives you a good overview of how to use the lower of cost or market rule using both the individual item method and the aggregate method. So there are two methods under the lower of cost or market rule that you can use. So thank you guys for watching this video, and hopefully now you have a better idea of different inventory valuing methods and why it's just so important to investors to value it the correct way. Thanks, guys.